Hello, I'm Dr. Tall Paul Simon. I am a psychiatrist and just wanted to share some information with you and everybody on the interwebs about some different topics. I've been in private practice since 2009 and help a lot of people with various mental health challenges, everything from anxiety and panic attacks to schizophrenia, bipolar, and everything in between and beyond. This video is about communication breakdowns and an easy, well, I don't know if I'd call it easy, a tool that can be used to help reestablish communication or resolve communication issues in a lot of different situations. Please subscribe and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and please give me some ideas to talk about, or if you have questions about different mental health topics, I'd be happy to share a clinical perspective on that. Nothing specific to you, of course, but I'd be happy to share opinions. I'm not a researcher, I'm not a big wig lecturer. I'm just in the trenches trying to help as many people as I can. So, communication breakdown. There are two main situations where communication breaks down in relationships. There's past relationships and current relationships. Okay, so relationships that have gone away in the past, even by death or divorce or separation, basically somebody that you don't communicate at all with anymore. And then there are people that we communicate currently with, a spouse or a friend or family member. So how do we say what we need to say in those relationships if the communication is no longer effective for whatever reason? Either one person's not effectively listening or they're gone. They're not present in the relationship for whatever reason. The most common situation where communication breaks down that I see is between couples, where one person, for whatever reason, is disengaged or they're just not communicating effectively. Now, my favorite tool to help spur communication between two people is by actually writing letters. I know it sounds hokey, but hear me out. Writing letters in these situations where your communication is ineffective or completely absent can be very useful, and I'll tell you why. So with somebody that they're not hearing, when you try to talk to the person, what happens? People get upset, right? Their emotions get stepped on or inflamed, or their feelings get hurt. Some boundary gets crossed, and then everybody's mad or upset and breaking down, or saying things that they regret later. So basically that fight or flight reflex that we all have gets triggered in some way. So the rational part of our brain, the front part of our brain, just loses control, and your brain is taken over by the emotional centers of your brain. So the emotions and the adrenaline take over and bad things happen. So how do we avoid that with letter writing? Think about the actual process of writing a letter. And I'm talking about actually with a pen and paper. I think that's more human. It's more natural. Typing is great, but it takes less focus and attention. So with letter writing, what happens? You usually are sitting down. You have a piece of paper and a pen, and you have to concentrate on what you want to say. Now, the act of writing a letter actually uses a lot of brain power. And if you think about it, I'll explain why. So taking a piece of paper and a pen, it uses the motor cortex, the top part of your brain, where you're moving your pen around, okay? Or typing or whatever. You have to move, so you're using your motor cortex. And you have to think about what you're going to say, right? So relationships and conflict and grief and all these things that are very complex, abstract concepts that we're trying to break down, attach words and phrases to these very big abstract concepts, and then put them into sentences and onto paper. So that takes a lot of power with the side part of our brains, the temporal lobes, where we're using words and language. Now, when we look at what we've written, we use the back part of our brain, okay? And so it's the visual cortex. So, and then you think about, in thinking about what you're wanting to say, it uses the front part of your brain. So in writing a letter to somebody, you're using your whole brain to come up with a written letter. So by using your whole brain, you're processing the issue, the communication, that relationship, or whatever you're dealing with, using your whole brain, not just like the emotion centers or whatever. So it's harnessing more brain power to a complex problem. Now, when you get a letter written, the important thing to do is decide whether you're going to give it to the person or not, okay? So if you write a letter and you have the intent of giving it to the person, you don't want to write the letter in anger and take it and throw it at the person and say, read this, you don't want to do that. You want to write the letter and then rewrite it a time or two, sleep on it, give it some time to process. Obviously, if you're taking the time to write a letter, you care about the relationship, right? And it's important what you're trying to say. So just like any other important written document, like a will or a paper for school or something, it's important, so you want to take some effort and rewrite it a time or two. Maybe take out the swear words and, maybe add stuff or subtract stuff, or, maybe reword it perhaps to be more effective. And then you give it to the person, after some time. And during this whole process, you're probably sitting somewhere relatively calmly. So the front part of your brain is more in control, not as much the emotion part of the brain. So it's a much more logical and rational way to address these issues than just confronting a person and trying to talk it out, And talking it out is great, but if those emotions keep just shutting people down and overwhelming the conversation, it's just not productive. So what happens? You give the letter to the person or let them find it, or you send it to them or something, and they read it, right? Assuming they can read. And usually if somebody is taking the time to read something, they are standing still or sitting. They are probably not all worked up and emotional at that time, so they're calmer. And they don't have you immediately there to be defensive against or latch onto in conflict there. So it's much calmer and it's less likely to trigger that fight or flight reflex, right? So now the other instance of writing a letter and communication that can be really helpful is in a situation where somebody is not there at all. So situations like a divorce or separation or death, or a past relationship that there were some things that were unresolved that need to be addressed. So for instance, let's say, somebody loses their parent and it was a complicated relationship, and the grief is difficult, a lot of mixed emotions or whatever. You can write a letter to the deceased person, and that can be very, very helpful. Now, you obviously can't give that letter to the person, but the same process of writing it applies, but at the end, you would maybe burn it, okay, or destroy it in some way, in a cathartic kind of release, I like the idea of burning, but, be safe, of course. And that can be a very effective way of processing some of those unresolved issues. So, yeah, I think letter writing is a very underutilized tool to express ourselves to other people these days. It takes some effort, but I think it's well worth the effort when communication is broken down. So try it out. Hope you found this video helpful, and give letter writing a try. Send a postcard if nothing else. I love postcards. So send some postcards while you're at it. You all take care. Bye-bye.